The anime begins with two children standing next to a moving truck. The girl, whose name is Mia, makes a request to the boy, whose name is Haruto. He is our hero, and he is about to move to another location. He tells her not to cry, since they will see each other again in the future. Then, Haruto tells her that when he is older, he will return to be with her. They plan to get married so that they can remain together forever. Furthermore, he promises that he will protect her until the day she dies. Several years later, we see Haruto observing a girl on a bus. Suddenly, they suffer an accident and are struck by a train. Everyone dies instantly while he remembers the promise he made to his friend in the past. After this event, Haruto awakens in the body of a boy with long hair and is surprised because he woke up in a place he does not recognize. Here, he informs us that it is the spring of the year 991, and he is in the kingdom of Beltran. He wonders if his name is Ryo and possesses memories of being trained in the art of kendo by a man who throws him against the ground. However, the old man calls him Haruto and asks him why he hesitated at the decisive moment, as that was the reason he was struck. Still very disoriented, he has other memories, such as being at school, and he does not understand why he is having them. He finally remembers being on the bus and suffering the accident, but at the same time, he has no idea what a bus actually is. What is happening is that the memories of his previous life are coming to him, since he has reincarnated into a body that knows nothing about the modern era. Therefore, he thought they were memories of things that did not yet exist. After that, he thinks it is because of his fever, and at that moment, some men enter the house where he is staying. The men say they thought he would be dead because of the illness and are surprised by how resilient he is. The men leave a bag in the corner of the room and say they are very happy because they received 10 gold coins for a simple transportation job while they take food out of the bag. As soon as the men begin to eat, they ask Haruto to go wash himself, since he was smelling bad and was ruining their food. Thus, being very hungry, he accepts and leaves. A while later, we see him eating some wild fruits while remembering his old life, in which he tells us his name is Haruto Amakawa. He was 20 years old and attended university. But after a traffic accident, he died. He is surprised because, having mixed memories, he does not understand what a traffic accident is. After having an identity crisis from not knowing if he is Ryo or Haruto, he confirms his identity and tells us that they live in a poor and bleak neighborhood so that he can avenge his mother. Afterward, we see a memory in which the child is even younger and asks his mother why they had black hair. She replies that they came from a very distant place and that their entire family was like that. He asks if he could see his grandparents someday, and his mother confirms that when he is older, she will take him, as they are in a place called Yagumo. Unfortunately, however, she was murdered by an unknown person. Back in reality, while Haruto was getting dressed, 4 girls appear. A young woman and an adult woman ask him if he has seen a girl his age with purple hair in the area. One of the short girls with purple hair, who is the sister of the girl they are looking for, threatens him if he lies, saying he will be in trouble. But he replies that he has not seen anyone. The girl with white hair makes the others reflect, saying that obviously he will not answer if they ask in such an impolite manner. Then, the young woman approaches and gently asks again. She introduces herself and says her name is Celia. He says his name is Ryo, and she mentions that it is a very unusual name. He then replies that his parents were immigrant. After having a short conversation, Ryo states he has not seen the girl they are searching for. Celia asks if the slums are located past that house, since they need to go look for the girl. Ryo replies yes, but says they should not go in those clothes, as it is dangerous for girls in such elegant clothing to be alone. Celia asks how women dress in the slums and agrees to change her clothes, but the short girl says they cannot waste time because her sister is in danger. The adult woman asks Celia to ensure she checks with her powers if there is anyone nearby who can use magic. After using a spell, Celia notices that Ryo possesses a magical aura and gathers a large amount of mana. They are surprised, but they do not find it impossible. Ryo is startled to see that his body is surrounded by a light. After that, Vanessa asks Celia if she found anyone else, but she says no, that she only managed to detect her own power and that of the boy. After that, before leaving, in order to express her gratitude for Ryo's assistance, the young woman hands him a small pouch filled with silver coins. Upon seeing the contents of the pouch, he is struck with surprise and runs toward his house to avoid being robbed. As soon as he arrives, he suddenly receives a knife wound to the chest, but he survives because he had hung the pouch around his neck, and the coins stopped the impact of the blade. The disoriented boy looks at the interior of the house and sees his companions dead on the floor, and he realizes that the assassin is a man wearing a mask. However, shortly before being attacked, he sees the spirit of a woman appear, who tells him that he does not have much time, and that she is going to teach him the art of magic, as well as how to utilize his mana. The spirit tells him to sharpen his senses, thereby activating his surrounding aura, and the spirit says that he must use that light emanating from him to become stronger. After this, Ryo begins to fight against the assassin, who is enhanced by a skill, but Ryo dodges every single blow. After applying a joint lock on him, the man ends up losing his arm. Impressed by the child's skills, the man attempts a final desperate attack, but Ryo reacts and throws him against the ground, leaving him completely unconscious. As soon as the fight concludes, he hears a noise coming from the sack that his companions had brought, and when he opens it, he sees that it is the purple-haired girl whom the other women were searching for. She asks him to take her to the castle where her father can give him a great reward, but she faints when she is startled by the sight of the bodies of the other men. He carries her on his back and encounters the girls once again, which causes Christina to slap him across the face, as she thought Ryo had deceived them by saying he did not know where her sister was. After an argument, they do not believe Ryo and do not allow him to speak, even though he proved that the young girl was safe. Vanessa asks the boy to accompany them to the castle, where they will interrogate him, but he refuses. She replies that it is not a request, but an order, so he realizes that arguing is a waste of time. He agrees to go with them, and the woman confirms that if he is innocent, she will set him free without any problem. Afterward, we see a group of soldiers inspecting the house where they were and removing the captured assassin while all the villagers watch. However, among them, a hooded man breaks a small red stone, which causes the bandit to die instantly, and after that, he departs. Already at the castle, we see that they have imprisoned Ryo, who tells the guard that they brought him there to speak about what happened. There, we discover that the guard is the sub-captain of the Royal Guard and that his name is Charles, who tells him that at that moment he will have to reveal everything he knows about the kidnapping of the princess, and if he does not cooperate, he will have to make him talk in the worst way possible. The boy says he knows nothing, which causes the man to start beating him, and he continues asking the same thing, forcing him to answer if he was an accomplice to the kidnapping. But Ryo repeatedly asserts that he truly does not know and had nothing to do with it. Meanwhile, in another room, we see the princess wake up surrounded by the other girls, who are happy that she is well, and her name is Flora. After they give her something to drink, she asks if they can explain to her what is happening. Vanessa tells her that they are investigating the boy for the kidnapping, but the princess says that he was the one who rescued her and asks if they can bring him to the room. However, the woman replies that they need the king's order to do that, so they decide to go and help him. After returning to the area where they were torturing Ryo, we see Charles, who is very tired of beating the boy since he could not get any answers from him, and we see Ryo gravely injured. Then, one of the guards recommends to the sub-captain that he should not hit him so hard because it could kill him. Charles, irritated, complains, saying that the royal guard was 100% occupied escorting and protecting the princess. Yet they still ended up kidnapping her, so they must clear their reputation. But suddenly, the girls enter the room. Surprised, they ask the captain what he is doing, and he replies that he is performing a legal interrogation. But Vanessa tells him that they should have conducted a courteous interrogation as she had requested. After that, Celia asks them to leave the boy alone. But Charles says no, as it is possible that he is involved in the kidnapping of the princess. Vanessa tells him that Flora herself said she owes her life to that boy, so they must release him immediately. Following this, Celia prepares to heal him through a spell, and the guards finally leave. Sometime later, Ryo wakes up in a bed next to the white-haired girl, and Ryo asks her where he is, and she replies that he is in the palace. He is surprised to be healthy again and asks the girl if it was she who healed him. She replies yes. Since he studied at the Beltran Royal Academy, he asks what will happen to him now, and the girl says they will grant him an audience with the king. The surprised young man then asks if she can teach him the proper protocols, as he cannot appear before the king without knowing anything. Some time later, we see the king, the queen, and the other princesses in the throne room. After it is announced that the savior of Princess Flora is entering, Ryo enters the room dressed in an elegant red outfit and kneels before the king. A while after the meeting, she addresses the matter with Ryo, saying they have not yet evaluated his academic knowledge. She asks him if he at least knows how to read and write, but Ryo replies that he does not. She then says she will teach him and asks him to come to her laboratory after classes, which is located in the basement of the library. Finally, she tells him that he will be sharing classes with the children of the nobility, and Ryo responds that it is fine, as he knows very well what that place is like. She tells him not to hesitate to seek her out if he has any problems. In the classroom, Celia introduces Ryo to the rest of the students, who are not very happy to have someone of his social class in their school. We then see what happened when he met the king, who thanked him for saving his daughter and allowed him to attend the academy as a scholarship student. After that, Ryo introduces himself to his peers, saying he hopes they are doing well, but one of the children mocks him, saying that at least he knows how to talk, unlike a servant, making the rest of the class laugh. Before giving some lessons, Celia sets some exercises for them to solve and personally tells Ryo not to push himself too hard. The other children laugh, saying he certainly does not know how to read. When the class ends, Ryo goes to the girl's laboratory. She is initially irritated because she had left a notice on the door saying no one should disturb her. But she realizes it is Ryo, and that he cannot read, which reminds her that she was going to teach him. She allows him to enter, and Ryo sees that the room is very messy, filled with books on the floor. He remarks that she has many books for someone so young, and we discover that Celia is only 12 years old. She replies that someone her age should be in primary education, but she has already graduated early, and Ryo says she must be someone brilliant. After a while, in the late afternoon, we see that Ryo has solved some of the exercises Celia gave him. To his teacher's surprise, they are all correct. He says they were simple multiplication and division problems, and that after learning the numbers, it was not that complicated. His teacher says that in his class, only Christina was able to solve them. He then recalls the university from his past life. When she asks where he learned arithmetic, he replies that his late mother taught him. After that, she prepares some tea and asks how his first day was, and if he had any problems. Ryo remembers the blonde boy, but despite that, says everything went very well and asks if she can recommend children's books for him to learn how to read. The next day, we see the students in a combat class. The professor tells Ryo to let him know when he is ready, and he confirms by leaving his shield on the ground. This surprises the man, who points his wooden sword at the boy, capturing the attention of the rest of the class who watch the combat. He remembers the kendo classes he had in his past life, leaving the professor and the rest of the students speechless as he demonstrates great skill while fighting. As the fight ends without a winner, the master tells Ryo that he has the posture of a great knight, but he responds that he is not interested in joining the knighthood. This again surprises his classmates. Sometime later, we see Ryo studying in the library until Celia arrives, asking why he studies so much after classes, and he responds that it is because exams are approaching. She tells him not to worry so much about the results because he is new to the class. Ryo thanks her for her concern, but says he does not intend to hold back. Several days later, the day of the exam arrives, and everyone is quite worried as the exam seemed rather difficult. We see the blonde boy irritated as he observes how Ryo shows no effort in answering. In the afternoon, when the class ends, Ryo goes out to the academy garden and remembers Mai, his childhood friend. After that, he sees that all the students look at him with contempt because he is a boy from the slums. Following this, in his room, Ryo remembers his friend from whom he had to separate when his parents divorced in his previous life. He says that he once met her again at school, but after that, he never saw her again, as if she had disappeared, since she never returned to school. The following day, while looking at the grade chart, no one can believe that the highest marks belong to Ryo along with Princess Christina. The blonde boy and his friends are irritated, as they do not see how this could have happened. When Ryo arrives, they begin to ask what kind of cheating he employed to achieve such good grades. Ryo states that he simply participated in class like the rest of the students, but the boy whom we now discover is named Alphonse calls him a liar. Eventually, a blonde girl remarks that envy is not a trait befitting a knight, but Alphonse replies that he does not intend to tolerate such injustice. She asks if he has any proof that the boy cheated, but he automatically falls silent since he does not know how to respond. At that moment, the professor appears and says that these grades are a product of Ryo's effort, and that she is a witness to the time the boy spent studying. Alphonse, irritated, decides to leave, and Ryo thanks the two girls for helping him. However, they say they did not intervene for his sake, and that next time they will surpass him, leaving quite indignant at having been bested. That afternoon, the professor congratulates Ryo on his grades and mentions she is a bit worried, as when he obtains such high marks, the rest of the students might look for excuses to criticize him even further. Ryo says he is already used to it, but she replies that nobles can be quite cruel. She mentions that she experienced something similar to Ryo, with the difference being that she had friends. He responds that he will not have any problems then because he has her by his side. This makes Celia blush, and she asks if he is teasing her since he is treating her like a girl. After denying it, he asks if it bothers her, but still embarrassed, she replies that it does not. After some joking and laughter regarding the professor's age and height, a very beautiful friendship begins. Afterward, we jump ahead 5 years. During combat class, the professor announces that a tournament will be held that year, involving the Knights of the Kingdom. The representatives for that class have already been chosen, and he instructs the individuals he is about to call to step forward. The man calls Alphonse, a boy named Stuart, and also Ryo. This truly angers Alphonse, as he considers it unacceptable for someone from the slums to participate in the Knights tournament. Furthermore, Ryo does not even know how to use magic. The professor states that he has already been chosen, and that he will not accept complaints. Later, the professor tells Ryo she discovered why he will participate in the tournament, noting that the Knights might recruit him if everything goes well, even before he graduates. After a brief conversation about the fact that the professor has not grown at all in the 5 years that passed, and about the way Ryo prepared the tea, Celia asks what he plans to do after graduating and if he is interested in becoming a knight. He says he wants to go on a journey because he wishes to visit a certain place, and she asks if he is going to leave the country. Ryo responds that life in that country was not easy. Celia offers for him to stay and work there with her, but he thanks her and rejects the offer, telling her it would not be appropriate to have a commoner in her laboratory. After talking a bit more, she asks where he plans to travel, and he replies that he plans to go to his parents' homeland, called Yagumo. She asks if it is the same place where the barbarian incident occurred, and he confirms it. Following this, we see the memory in which his mother told him that when he grew up, she would take him to visit his grandparents, which leaves Celia very worried. A few days later, we see the tournament begin, and a knight named Alfred will be the referee for the matches between the students. Then, the first match in which Ryo participates takes place. Just before heading out, he is stopped by Alphonse, who asks him not to embarrass himself because, otherwise, the public will expect less from his own fight. He tells Ryo that no one expects much from him, but Ryo simply ignores him and enters the Colosseum. Next, his rival from the Knights is introduced. It is Charles himself, the sub-captain of the guard who tortured him years ago. Charles is surprised and, with an air of superiority, tells him that although he knew the boy was at the academy, he never thought he would have to face that filthy brat. Ryo says he has a debt to settle with him and apologizes for not being of help in the past. After that, the referee starts the fight. The sub-captain feels insulted because he thinks the boy is underestimating him by fighting with a strange and unprotected stance. After an exchange of blows, Charles becomes very angry. He had been demoted because of Ryo 5 years earlier, and the professor is frightened to see that the guard is fighting with everything he has, as she thinks it is too much for a student. But Ryo, upon seeing an opening in his opponent's attack, disarms him and wins the match. Charles tells the referee that he was a bit careless, but Alfred shouts at him, stating that a defeat is a defeat, and that, as a member of the Honored Knights, he must accept this loss and withdraw. That same night, after drinking, Charles complains, claiming that if he had fought seriously, he would have won. However, another noble accompanying him says it is not so bad for students to take the glory occasionally, since the rest of the knights won their matches. During the conversation, we discover that the noble accompanying him is the ambassador of the Proxia Empire, and Charles tells him that the boy was under suspicion for kidnapping Princess Flora 5 years ago, and that, despite the interrogation, he refused to say anything. We soon see that the ambassador was the hooded figure who killed the bandit. The next day, Celia is waiting for Ryo to leave class to celebrate his victory. Afterward, he goes to the back of the school, where he meets a girl who hands him a love letter to confess her feelings. After this, the girl runs away. Professor Celia watches and becomes a little jealous. That night, the professor is organizing her books until she notices that Ryo was the only one who did not write down his plans after graduation, and she remembers what he said days before about intending to visit Yagumo. The following day in class, they were to learn magic, specifically the illumination skill. However, Alphonse says that this is a very simple spell, and that the whole class should know how to use it. only to then mock Rio, saying he would be unable to do so. The professor then asks for a demonstration of illumination. After they perform it, she tells them that if that is their level, they cannot say they have mastered the skill. She then demonstrates what absolute control of the ability looks like by creating several lights on the ceiling of the room, leaving all the students impressed. Rio tells us that he cannot use spells like the others, but he is capable of copying everything he sees by mimicking the flow of magic. At the end of the class, Stuart, one of the students, thanks the professor for the lesson and, irritated, tells Rio that it seems he has been seducing the female students lately, claiming his victory in the tournament was pure coincidence. The professor reprimands him for this behavior, but Stuart remains angry, saying that if he tries anything strange during the next outdoor exercise, the House of Duke Huguenot will not tolerate it. Without a word, Rio bows his head and leaves, worrying Princess Flora, as she feels great pity for him. Her sister tells her that, despite it being a false accusation, it is better not to get involved. During the field lesson, they are to put into practice what they learned about military tactic. Alphonse explains how the test will work. To leave the battle zone, the groups must take the shortest route to reach the objective. The test will last until sunset, and a good performance will benefit their grades. One of the girls says it is quite complicated, considering the area is very mountainous and wooded, and it will take twice as long to move. But the boy responds that he already has a special route in mind. Stuart says that the soldiers serving his house have great knowledge of the area, and told him about an animal trail that can be used as a shortcut. The girl feels this is like cheating, but Alphonse says that information is part of war and asks for Princess Christina's opinion. She grants him permission to be the commander of the operation. Stuart tells Rio that he should thank him, even though he is a burden to the group and does not know how to use magic. They found a use for him, which will be carrying everyone's luggage. Rio accepts and carries the bags. At that moment, Princess Flora approaches him offering help, but he refuses, thanking her for the gesture. After walking for a while, they are attacked by goblins. Alphonse calms the group and orders the vanguard to enhance their physical abilities with artifacts. After obeying, they begin to fight the goblins and defeat practically all of them. Afterward, they tell Rio not to just stand there and that they must continue. As we can see, the ambassador of the Proxia Empire is hidden behind the trees in a robe. Relieved they did not see him, but surprised that Rio barely notices his presence. He thinks he must continue testing the boy to see his true capabilities. The group is happy to see the exit of the forest. They think the test is over, but they realize there is a cliff separating them from the objective. Following this, they realize the path has ended. The information was wrong, and Princess Christina asks Alphonse what they should do now. Suddenly, a large spear is thrown near the boys, and they see a group of orcs ready to attack them. The group commander orders the vanguard to block the spear with their shields and, although Rio manages to deflect it with his sword, Stuart is wounded in the leg. This causes several of his companions to stumble, and he ends up pushing Princess Flora toward the cliff. Without a second thought, Rio leaps after her, enveloping her body with magic and pushing her back up to the top of the cliff. He succeeds in saving her, but he ends up falling himself. Following this, they form a formation where the front line protects with their shields, while the girls in the rear attack the orcs with magic. A girl named Rona is placed in charge of healing the wounded. After several attacks, they finally manage to defeat all the monsters. Meanwhile, we see that Rio is at the bottom of the cliff in perfect condition, which makes him wonder if his companions will become suspicious seeing that he sustained no injuries. At the same time, he recalls the ability with which he was able to save the princess and himself, though without truly knowing what that power was. For a few seconds, he remembers the spirit that saved him from the assassin years ago. Back with the group, they are arguing and blaming Stuart for knocking the princess off the cliff. However, he claims he collided with her because he was pushed. The boy decides to lie and blame Rio, saying he was so frightened by the monster attack that he pushed him. He claims that because he was injured, he ended up colliding with Princess Flora. Alphonse tries to make sense of his friend's story, suggesting that Rio feared being accused of killing the princess and threw himself down to save her, ultimately falling. Princess Flora says it is not the time to find someone to blame, and that they must focus on leaving the forest. Very irritated, the princess asks if they are actually thinking of leaving Rio behind. Alphonse says he got what he deserved when he fell, so she declares that if no one intends to help him, she will, even if she has to do it alone. Her companions are surprised and say they will send a search party once the exercise is over, but they are quickly interrupted by a loud roar from the forest. Everything begins to shake to the rhythm of approaching footsteps until a giant minotaur suddenly appears from the woods with a great leap. Princess Christina attacks the beast with a bolt of electricity without hesitation, but it repels it as if it were nothing. They organize themselves so the vanguard can enhance their physical attribute. Since the electricity failed, they now use an ice spear against the minotaur. As soon as they attack, they are quickly thrown back by a blow from the creature. Alphonse orders a retreat, and the blonde girl tells Princess Christina she must flee, but she asks about her sister. The young woman replies that she likely escaped, so they must hurry. Elsewhere, we see Flora healing one of her wounded companions, only to be discovered by the minotaur, which automatically attacks her. Quickly, Rio appears and cuts off the creature's arm. He tells her to flee with the injured boy and begins to face the beast. After several blows, he realizes the enemy is very fast and resilient. After a powerful exchange of attacks, Rio takes advantage of an opening and cuts off the minotaur's head. At that moment, the students appear to check on Princess Flora. Taking advantage of the moment, Rio decides to disappear among the trees. Meanwhile, the ambassador managed to verify the boy's skills and understands that Rio is capable of using spirit arts. Wondering if he is one of the people from Yagumo who came there, he then flies away. That afternoon, we see Celia is irritated because the director gave her a lot of work. Through the door, she hears them talking about Rio, saying he has disappeared. At that moment, we see a man named Garcia saying that Princess Flora is defending him. He is accompanied by Stuart, claiming this attitude puts the prestige of the royal house in danger. Mr. Garcia takes advantage of the royal family's poor situation to blame Rio. He is authorized to place the blame on Rio, and he smiles wickedly. Afterward, we see that Celia is worried about what might have happened to him. That night in her laboratory, Rio enters. She becomes very concerned, running to him and giving him a hug. After telling her what happened and explaining that even if he told the truth, they would not believe him because he is a commoner, Rio thanks her for knowing her. Just before starting his journey, he decides to say goodbye to her and says he will send letters under a new name, which will be Haruto, his true name. After saying their goodbyes, they share one last hug, and she says that she will be anxiously waiting for his letters, as she cries and reminisces about the moments she spent with him. After this, we see the dungeon of Duke Huguenot. He stands before a young woman, tosses a piece of Rio's clothing at her, and states that this is the target. Like a hound, she sniffs the garment while the man provides details about the boy, ordering her to find and kill him. It is then revealed that the name of this beast girl is Latifa. A few days later, we see Rio, who is now dressed in a robe. He encounters an orc along the way, but with an enormous leap, he passes over it and continues without stopping until he reaches the neighboring kingdom, which he observes on a map. He narrates, as if writing a letter to his professor, that this kingdom is called Galark, and specifically that he had arrived in Amand, its merchant city. After arriving, he observes the wanted posters to see if he is on any of them, but they had not yet reached that location. We discover it is a city full of people and life, where commerce is the foundation of the economy. We see that Latifa, who was also wearing a robe, was a short distance away from him. She causes Rio to become alert. He quickly turns around but sees no one, as she had hidden in an alleyway. He is surprised to hear a vendor offering him cans of pasta, as he remembers they existed in his old world and did not know they had already been invented in this era. The vendor tells him they are made with wheat pasta, which is an invention of a girl named Lyslot, who is the governor of that city. Rio orders a dish, tastes it, and automatically loves it, as it brings back memories. Because of this, he wonders if Lyslot might come from the same world as he does. A while later, as Rio walks down the street, he remembers what his mother told him that when he grew up, he would visit Yagumo, and he is certain that he wants to visit the city of his parents. We also see a memory in which he asks a vendor where he could obtain more money for his journey. The man tells him he must follow a street until he reaches a guild, where he will see a line to buy menho on the first floor. He asks what menho is, and the man responds that it is another invention by Lady Lyslot. After seeing a woman selling this food, it brings back memories of his other life, and he decides to enter the guild. He is surprised by a large inside and how well decorated the place is. At that moment, a blue-haired girl appears who seems to be the receptionist. She tells him it is advisable not to enter the premises with a sword and that he may leave his belongings in a place where they will be kept under protection. Upon removing his hood, he leaves the girl quite surprised, and the first thing she notices is his black hair. After introducing herself, she says her name is Lot, and that she will be his assistant today. She shows him all the types of products and food that exist in the building. A little later, in a room where Rio is waiting, the girl enters with a companion bringing 15 kg of dry pasta and 10 kg of barley, along with cooking utensils and condiments. She asks if he can carry all of that, and he tells her not to worry because, although it may not seem like it, he is quite strong. While drinking, the girl asks if he is already accustomed to drinking black tea and mentions that a friend of hers loved it, while he thinks of his professor. After talking about tea for a while, Rio asks her which leaves it is made from, and she becomes excited, saying they are going to close a good deal. After that, Rio writes a letter to Celia, in which he says that everything is going very well, and that he will not be able to send more letters until he reaches his next destination. He adds that if there is no news, it means he is fine. Afterward, Rio, now with his backpack loaded with supplies, leaves the guild, and the girls begin to converse about how he was a mysterious young man. We are then told that the blonde woman is named Cosette, and that, in reality, the blue-haired girl was the famous Lyslot. Rio continues his way through the forest and finds a girl lying on the ground. When he is ready to help her, she quickly reacts by attacking with a poison dart. Rio reacts, but after a few strikes, he begins to feel dizzy. At that moment, he realizes his enemy is a beast person upon noticing her ears, and she declares she is going to kill him. Then, Rio uses a spell that neutralizes the poison, which clearly leaves the girl quite surprised as she attacks him repeatedly with a dagger. After this, a fight begins in which both stand out for their physical abilities, dodging each other's attacks. After retreating slightly, the beast girl decides to enhance her physical skills with an enchantment. This takes Rio by surprise, as he sees she already possessed great skill without being strengthened. Even so, he does not back down and goes on the offensive. And she does not understand how he can be so fast if he is only a human. Rio takes his sword and notices that the girl relies heavily on her daggers. Therefore, after dodging several strikes, he knocks her down, disarming her and throwing her against the ground. After that, he pins her down, immobilizing her, and declares that the fight is over. The girl is terrified, thinking she is going to die, but he renders her unconscious with an enchantment. Afterward, he removes her weapons and binds her. Noticing that she wears a slave collar, he recalls a magic spell he read in a book called Dispel, so he attempts to copy it and successfully removes the collar from the girl. At that moment, we see Latifa's dream, and it is revealed that she is the girl who died alongside Rio in the bus accident, having awakened in the body of a beast girl as a slave. Before the accident, her name was Suzyun. We soon see that it is Stuart who keeps her chained, forcing her to say they are siblings while torturing her with the collar she wore. She, obviously, obeys. After waking up, she is frightened to see Rio, and he tells her that her hands and feet are tied, warning her that if she does not want to die, she must remain calm and not attack him. She misinterprets Rio and thinks he is evil, but Rio asks if she comes from Beltran and if she knows what the collar she was wearing represents. She notices he has removed it, and Rio asks if the collar was the reason she followed orders, telling her she will no longer feel that pain. She then begins to cry when she finally feels free and asks for the name of the person who gave her orders. She says she does not know her master's name, as they never told her, but she knows her older brother's name and says his name is Stuart. Rio asks if he is also a beast man, but Latifa says no, that he was an ordinary human. This makes Ryo remember his classmate. After that, he asks her if there is anyone else besides her who wants to kill him, and she replies that she does not know, but thinks it is very unlikely and it was only her. Ryo asks one final question, wanting to know if she still intends to kill him, and she fearfully replies no. Then he releases her and says that her equipment is next to her clothes and that from now on, she is free because she no longer has the collar that controlled her. However, he reminds her that in the kingdom where she was enslaved, beast people are persecuted, and he recommends she go to the kingdom in the east called the Barbarian region or the Wild region, where humans live with people like her and other demi-human. After that, he says he is leaving while gathering his things and makes it clear to her that he will have no mercy if she attacks him again. After some time walking, the girl continues following Ryo from a few meters away. He notices and asks if she still wants to say anything else to him, but the girl replies that she only wants to accompany him. Ryo says it is a misunderstanding, and that he only saved her because it was more convenient than killing her. Therefore, being a human like the people who enslaved her, she should be afraid of him. But the girl says she is not scared, since he saved her, and she does not think he is evil. Ryo asks if she really thinks he views her favorably after she tried to kill him. This sentence frightens the girl very much, and she apologizes with tears in her eyes. But Ryo says he is not angry with her, since she could not disobey because of the collar, but that nothing guarantees she will not attack him again. Therefore, she must understand that he cannot trust her. Then Latifa asks him to put the collar on her, and Ryo asks why she still wants to keep that thing. Latifa responds that although the collar makes her suffer, being alone seems worse to her, as she feels very afraid and begs to be allowed to go with him. Ryo then says she can go with him, but she must throw that collar away, and after asking her name, he continues on his way. A little later they stop to eat, and Latifa cries with happiness while eating a sandwich, as before she only received rations. Soon we see Ryo and his companion traveling through several countries until they stop because she is already quite tired, so they decide to camp that night. Meanwhile, Cilia receives one of Ryo's letters and hopes he is well. Soon we see Ryo together with the Beast Girl cooking spaghetti on the campfire, and he is surprised to realize that she knows what it is. Then he asks if she had eaten that pasta before, and she replies that she thinks so. After that, Ryo begins to suspect that the girl also came from another world. During the night, while both are sleeping, he wakes up hearing Latifa crying. Scared, she says in a dream that she wants to return to her family in Tokyo. This confirms the suspicions he had, and he comforts her by covering her to calm her down. The next morning, Latifa wakes up embarrassed to see Ryo sleeping next to her, and is surprised to notice that he has black hair, just like the boy who died next to her in the bus accident. When Ryo wakes up after a small misunderstanding, the girl asks if she can call him brother from now on. For a moment, Ryo reflects sadly, thinking that she was turned into a slave immediately after being reborn into that world, and thus believes that accepting her request might comfort her slightly. He accepts, and after that, they continue their journey toward the Barbarian region. After overcoming various problems caused by different landscapes, several days pass. Upon waking, Ryo asks Latifa what she wants to eat for breakfast, and shortly after, he asks if she truly cannot see the giant tree in front of them. The girl replies no, that she sees only an ordinary forest. Ryo then thinks that perhaps something is hiding its presence with magic. During the afternoon, when they are about to enter the forest, the Beast Girl, somewhat frightened, asks if they are going to get lost. He calms her, but inside the forest, she claims to smell a strange scent she does not recognize. She asserts there is more than one presence. After realizing it is not the scent of an animal, Ryo asks if the source is nearby, but she says it is distant. They decide to rest there for the day, as they seem to be close to their destination. The girl is happy they are about to leave the forest. That night, while Latifa sleeps, she has another nightmare, and Ryo calms her with a spell. However, as soon as he does this, he notices that the campfire outside has suddenly gone out. When he leaves the tent, he finds an enormous wolf sitting in front of him, emitting an intense light that prevents him from seeing clearly. At that moment, he undergoes an attack which he narrowly manages to dodge, as his eyes have not yet returned to normal. He uses an ability that allows him to analyze the terrain and attacks one of the silhouettes around him. Then one of the attackers, a white-haired beast girl, speaks to the other girl. She has bird wings, and her name is Yuzuma. The white-haired one urges caution, as the boy seems to possess some kind of spirit art. A third girl, clearly an elf, explains that it is merely a spirit art capable of highlighting the odd in the area. But they are alerted by a fifth member of the group named Alma that with this skill, he can know how many of them are there. Ryo, still without fully recovering his vision, asks if they are demi-humans, and, if they are, says he wishes to speak. Yuzuma then tells the beast girl named Seirei that humans are treacherous beings, and they must be careful. Nevertheless, Seirei asserts that she wants to hear what Ryo has to say. Afterward, she approaches him, saying they prefer not to use the term demi-human to describe themselves. Ryo apologizes, as he never intended to insult them. Meanwhile, the other two girls check the tent and say that Seirei found an unconscious beast girl, sleeping because of the spirit arts. Then, furious, Yuzuma attacks him and throws him against the ground. After striking him, Yuzuma is scolded because she attacked without receiving an order, while Ryo begins to heal himself, but the bird girl attacks him again. However, he defends himself by drawing his sword and blocking Yuzuma's strikes. Seirei, the beast girl, says they discovered he had one of their people inside, and that since they have questions, they will have to capture him. Ryo says everything is a misunderstanding and asserts that he wanted to deliver Latifa to be under their protection. Yuzuma remains suspicious, and they attack Ryo again, saying that humans are not trustworthy, especially someone accused of kidnapping, but he continues to deny it. Suddenly, he feels something enveloping his leg, and we see it is a spiritual ability. The bird girl takes advantage of this and launches an electrical attack that leaves Ryo unconscious. Afterward, we see that Ryo has a strange dream in which he is floating in a vacuum. Before him appears the spirit that protected him in the past. He asks who she is, and the spirit replies she does not know, but she says she knows him, and that his name is Haruto. However, he says this answer is wrong, as he still believes himself to be Ryo. Even so, he asks why she knows him, and she replies it is because they are connected. She also says she belongs only to him, and when he asks what that means, she replies that time is running out and she can do nothing more for him. So she embraces him and disappears. At that moment, still within the dream, Ryo opens his eyes and sees before him his childhood friend, the girl named Mai, who asks him to wake up. In that instant, he awakens completely and sees the elf girl beside him. Right at the door, Latifa comes running to embrace him, crying because he left her alone. After that, the girl notices that Ryo is chained to the bed and looks angrily at the other girls, asking who did this. At that moment, an elderly woman, who is also a beast woman, enters through the door. She apologizes for what happened and says she would like to ask for help to learn more about the girl. At that moment, Latifa, still irritated, says no, because of what they did to him. Yuzuma quickly kneels and offers an apology. After that, the rest of the girls do the same. Then, the elderly woman asks Orphea, one of the green-haired elf girls, to release Ryo's chains. She says that the following morning they will meet with the village elders to apologize properly, and that, although they will sleep in a humble room that night, she hopes that both he and the girl can rest well there. After that, they leave the room. The next day, Ryo accompanies the woman while observing the village, asking what kind of place it is. The woman responds that it is the world tree, where Dryas, the spirit of all trees, lives. Ryo says he arrived there by following her, which surprises the woman since a high-level illusion barrier exists around the tree, making it impossible to see without mastering spirit arts. She asks if someone taught him, and he replies no, so the woman remarks that he possesses a gigantic talent. Afterward, he enters a room where other elders are gathered. The man in the middle initiates the meeting and introduces himself as Sildora. We also discover the name of the elderly woman is Ursula, and the dwarf to her right is named Dominique. Then the elders offer their apologies for the misunderstanding of the previous day, and thank him for rescuing one of their children. They ask what would be the correct way to thank him, and Ryo asks if they could take Latifa into their care. They say it was something they were already going to ask of him, so he should be more open and state what he truly wants. Then Ryo, seeing that they had treated him very well, asks if he could stay for a season in that village, and they respond that there is no problem with that. The elders also say that if they need anything else during the time they stay, they may ask. Ryo confesses that he would like to learn about the daily use of spirit arts, so they say he will find a very good teacher. Suddenly, the voice of a young woman is heard. She appears unexpectedly with a spell behind Ryo. and it is revealed that she is Dryas, the spirit of the world tree. She approaches Ryo, stating she perceives the presence of a spirit inside him. Ryo, confused, asks about this, and the girl says it is possible he has made a pact. Surprised, Ryo responds that he does not remember anything like that. She explains that upon making a pact with a spirit, one loses the ability to use magic, which is a problem for humans. Apparently, Ryo made a pact at some point in his life, which makes him remember the comments his former classmates used to make. At that moment, Dryas asks if she could investigate this a little. Ryo immediately accepts, so she gently places her hands on his head and notices that he truly hides a great amount of odd within himself and asks if he is truly human. He returns the question, wanting to know if she found anything. She responds that it is as if a humanoid spirit is sleeping inside him. This surprises everyone in the room except Ryo, as he has no idea what that means. Then she explains that spirits possessing human form like them are of the second highest category or even the highest category. She says that those of the highest category were known as the Great Six, but disappeared 1,000 years after the Divine Demonic War. And she says the spirit Ryo possesses could be one of them. Ryo asks if there is any problem being of that category, and she responds there is no problem. But the inhabitants of the village will regard him with great reverence since she, being second class, is already treated practically as a deity. Therefore, in his case, it would be something even more incredible. Ryo asks what the consequences will be, and the elders comment that, due to his condition, they should begin to call him by the title of saint. The dwarf adds that basically because of this, they will treat him even better, meaning he is practically a god. After the meeting, Dryas takes Ryo to his new home from that moment on, where the girls are waiting for him. As soon as Latifa sees him, she gives him a hug, and Ryo observes her new clothes. After showing him all the advantages of that house, they prepare to eat together as a group. Ryo notices they are going to eat rice, which surprises him since it is quite strange for them to consume that in this era, and the red-haired elf asks if they do not eat rice and straw. After the meal ends, Sarah asks which room he prefers for sleeping. Ryo is left without understanding anything, and she explains that Lady Ursula said the three of them would live there to take care of the two of them. At that moment, the old woman appears and asks Ryo to accept, and he asks if it would not be a problem since he is human. She replies that he will make good friends in the village, and that it will also be beneficial for her. She is satisfied with getting used to the fact that more people can care for her. Consequently, Ryo is unable to refuse. Sometime later, Dryas begins to teach him how to use spirit arts, while the other girls help him adapt to communal life and the traditions of the village. Thus, Ryo begins to live a peaceful life alongside everyone, or rather, all of them enjoying daily life until, sometime later, the Festival of Spirits arrives, during which rituals are performed so that the people may receive divine protection. Meanwhile, in a very mountainous region, we see a wyvern being ridden by two men, the ambassador of the Proxia Empire and another young man. After landing, they decide to enter a cavern. For a moment, we see a memory of the young man, in which it is revealed that he is undergoing a test to join a group called the Heavenly Lions. We also discover the name of the ambassador is Rias. The nobleman exits the cavern carrying an enormous creature egg in his arms and asks the young man to hold it while he guides the wyvern on the way back. The lad asks if the creature's parents would not attempt to retrieve the egg, but Rias comments that there is nothing to worry about since they are quite far from the kingdom. After a while, the ambassador smiles maliciously, noticing in the distance that a group of dragons is pursuing them, trying to recover their offspring's egg. This event occurs approximately 1 year after Ryo and Latifa's arrival in the village, when the day of the Festival of Spirits arrives once again. During the festival, Dryas officially recognizes Ryo and Latifa as allies of the village, as well as official inhabitants of the location. The two ascend a sort of altar where the spirits awaited them, and she gives a kiss on Ryo's forehead and another on Latifa's. After this, everyone applauds happily, and the dwarf proposes the start of the celebration. At night, we see the entire village enjoying the party with a great banquet. Ryo feels a bit overwhelmed since his companions are somewhat intoxicated and will not leave his side. He recommends that they be more careful and not drink so much. Orphea responds that they have known each other for a year now, and that he should stop being so serious. However, Sarah agrees that Ryo is right and that they should control themselves a bit, but a jealous Latifa embraces Ryo even tighter, nearly suffocating him. At that moment, Alma appears, saying that if they truly want to improve their relationship with him, they should not pressure him so much. Sarah comments that although Latifa is already accustomed to everyone as if they were sisters, Rio still seems a bit distant. He thanks them for their concern and says he is not very good at socializing, but that he wants to get along better with everyone. This makes the girls very happy. Then Sarah proposes a toast to an even stronger friendship and goes to fetch drinks, while Orphea does the same. Seeing the state of her friends, Alma decides to accompany them, and Latifa follows right behind. In this way, Rio ends up alone. At that moment, Ursula approaches and talks about Latifa and how well she has integrated into the village, also commenting that perhaps the time is coming for him to say that, sooner or later, he will continue his journey. On the other hand, we see the ambassador and his companion again, who decide to rest in a forest during the night to return to the city first thing in the morning. Rias tells the boy that he is going to investigate the area, so he asks him to look after the wyvern and gives him an object for protection just as a precaution. This object is identical to the one he used to kill the bandit many years earlier, and he tells him that if he consumes it, Rias will be able to know his location at all times, should he need to rescue him. At that moment, both separate, and the ambassador goes out to check if the dragons are still following, and he is pleased that his signal has worked. Back in the village, we see Dryas looking worriedly at the sky. Meanwhile, Rio and Latifa are walking in the forest. Latifa tells him that the party is still happening and that they should return, but Rio tells her that he has something more important to say. He asks if she would like to live there, and she replies yes. After this, he tells her that in a short time he will leave the city, and she reacts very poorly, saying she will go with him. But clearly Rio refuses, since he has no idea of the dangers that might exist in that area. However, Latifa becomes angry and runs away. Later, we see the elders talking to Sarah because everyone noticed something strange within the magical barrier, so they say they are going to investigate it. We return once more to the ambassador. He has returned to the dragon's nest, taking advantage of the fact that no one is there and they are pursuing the first egg that was stolen. He is ready to steal all the rest. After that, we see the girls heading toward the human with the wyvern and the first stolen egg, guided by the trail of his odd. When they reach the boy, they tell him not to resist and that they do not want to hurt him. But the insecure young man draws his weapon as a precaution and releases the wyvern. Then, before it can escape, they decide to attack the creature. But it manages to dodge all the attacks and heads toward the city. Suddenly, a dragon appears right behind it. The girls realize it is not just one, but a large pack. And that is when they realize the egg might belong to one of their offspring. Now they must prevent them from advancing toward the village. Therefore, they form a formation in which each has a specific role and send one of them to warn the elders. As soon as Rias finishes stealing the rest of the eggs, he decides to get rid of his partner by breaking the artifact identical to the one he had given him. And we see how the young man dies instantly, falling from the wyvern. Continuing the fight, Sarah asks Alma to also face the black dragon, and Alma asks if Sarah could lend her spirit so she can fight alongside it. She agrees and summons a giant wolf. On the other hand, we see Latifa walking alone through the forest, thinking about what just happened with Rio, in which she refused several times and did not want to leave the village. Right at that moment, in front of her, the body of the dead boy who was riding the wyvern falls along with the egg, which shatters. She approaches to check the egg, but suddenly one of the giant dragons lands in front of her. During this entire confrontation in the village, we see the citizens running in fear, trying to reach a safe place. Rio, seeing all this commotion, asks the dwarf what is happening, and he informs him about the situation they are in. However, Rio becomes frightened at the thought that his little friend, who is now considered a sister, was alone in the forest, so he runs toward her. Meanwhile, we see how the girl is being attacked by the beast, and before receiving a fire attack, Alma appears and creates a tornado with her hammer that interrupts the attack. She summons her spirit named Ifrita, which is a giant lion, and together with her friend's wolf spirit, they attack a monster. When she is ready to strike it with her hammer, she sees that the creature's skin is very hard and is launched through the air when she rebounds against its rigid scales. The girl becomes worried about her friend, as she will not be able to win, and tells her that if they do not stop the monster, it could go to the city. Therefore, to prevent Alma from taking more damage, Latifa runs to distract the dragon. At first, she manages to dodge some of the monster's attacks, but the dragon, very furious, strikes a tree on the ground, which ends up cutting off her path as it prepares to attack her. But just before receiving the attack, a large ice projectile hits it. It is at that moment that Rio appears to rescue his sister. She apologizes for being a nuisance, and he tells her not to worry and that everything is fine. After that, a fight against the black dragon begins. He manages to land some blows on the dragon, which surprises Alma, since he is fighting a monster without weapons. Just before receiving a fire attack, he uses an ability that fires directly into the creature's mouth. The dragon becomes irritated by this and prepares to launch another. But Ryo repeats his strategy, launching an ability into the creature's mouth again. However, this time he strikes the beast's nose with a blow so that it closes its mouth, causing the attack to explode inside it. Having done this, the dragon falls defeated. At that moment, everyone arrives. They are surprised to discover that the boy managed to face the beast entirely alone, and the rest of the monsters retreat upon seeing that their leader has fallen. The next day, we see Ryo talking to Latifa, who tells him she feels very bad about the previous day and understands that sooner or later Ryo will depart. She tells him that, having always been a burden to him, she felt Ryo wanted to leave because he thought the same. But he says no, that is not true, as she is his sister. After a short conversation, Ryo tells her that he will depart for the east, to the Yagumo region, as he wants to visit his roots. At that moment, she tells him she understands him, as she lived in a place called Japan and died before living in that world. This impresses Ryo, as he did not expect the girl herself to tell him. And he says he went through the same thing and is also from Japan. After talking, a short period of time passes during the day, in which we can see Ryo now with his new black equipment. The dwarf gives him a sword, and Ursula gives him elixirs and potions from the elves. Finally, she gives him a kind of bracelet that serves as a temporary inventory to store everything they just gave him. After that, everyone says goodbye to him. Latifa gives him a big hug before he proceeds with his journey. But unfortunately this time alone, as she will not accompany him. Some time later, Ryo tells us that he has been traveling for 2 months, but has found no clues or information about his parents. He confirmed that everyone there has black hair. As the people tend to the crops and notice his presence, they wonder who he is. Ryo speaks with 2 girls who were harvesting vegetables and tells them he is a traveler looking for someone, and thus would like to speak with the village chief. One of the girls replies that her grandmother is the leader of the village, and he asks if it would be too much trouble to take him to her. Once at the house, the girl, whose name is Yuba, calls her grandmother, who tells Ryo that he has quite peculiar clothing. He introduces himself, and the old woman, seeing his polite manner, asks if he is from another country. He responds that he is, and the lady introduces herself as Yuba and asks what brought him to this town. He replies that he was looking for her, as he was told she knew about more people. The lady, seeing that the conversation would be quite long, offers for him to enter the house. A while later, sitting comfortably, Ryo explains to them that his parents lived there 15 years ago and were named Zen and Naomi. Upon hearing these names, she asks the 2 girls to return to work. They are a bit irritated, and when they leave, the lady asks for more details. He tells her that his parents lived there 15 years ago, that his father died before he could remember him, and that he lived his entire life with his mother until she died when he was 5 years old. He then reveals that returning to the village was something he talked about with his mother when he was little. And afterward, he says he thought if he discovered where they lived, he could make a grave for her, as they deserved a tribute in their homeland. The old woman agrees with him, saying she knew them, and that Ryo looks very much like them. Ryo asks how she knew them, and the lady tells him that she is Zen's mother. Therefore, she is his paternal grandmother. She then says that both already have their graves, and that they will visit them that afternoon. When they arrive, he kneels before them and begins to pray. The lady tells him they had some hidden reasons for leaving the village, and that they could never return. Ryo asks what reason they had, but his grandmother tells him she cannot answer until the right time arrives, and invites him to live there until that time comes. After that, she speaks to him about one of the girls, named Rory, the daughter of his father's older brother, meaning she is his 15-year-old cousin. After this, the lady withdraws, and Ryo asks to stay a little longer to pray. When night begins to fall, Ryo returns home, where his cousin and grandmother are waiting for him for dinner. The next day, Ryo wakes up very early, telling his grandmother he was going to prepare breakfast. Rory also appears, not remembering that Ryo was in the house. She was dressed in very peculiar pajamas, so when she realizes, she runs away embarrassed. A while later, they begin to cook. He discovers that both of them can also use spirit arts. After that, 2 acquaintances come to eat, named Shin, the boy, and Seo, the girl, and the 2 are siblings. After tasting the food, they like it very much and eat quite a bit. and after eating, the lady makes a request of the boy. She wants him to accompany Ryo to a tavern to teach him how to be a hunter. Shin tries not to take on the responsibility, but he gives in and tries to annoy Shin a bit while both girls talk about him possibly being someone from the nobility. After that, we see both boys practicing hunting with a bow, along with a man named Dora. After finishing the hunting session, Shin feels very bad, as Ryo surpassed him. Later, when he returns home, realizing he has become very dirty, he uses a spell on the ground, creating a sort of outdoor bath. After cleaning himself, the two girls appear, saying he smells very good, and he says it is just soap. Next, Shin appears alongside two other guys wondering what that strange construction is, but they become quite irritated thinking that Ryo just wants to show off, and the brats begin to offend Ryo. However, he is defended by his cousin and Seo, who become a bit irritated seeing that they are not right. Later, we see Ryo helping in the garden, earning the admiration of the girls who observed him and the envy of the brat. Then they check the harvest and see that it was a very good year, and his grandmother, seeing Ryo's skills, decides to ask a favor of him, saying there are supplies that need to be sold in the capital. Thus, seeing that he is very strong, she asks him to protect the transport team. But suddenly we hear a scream. It is Shin, who is arguing with some men from another village. The man, whose name is Gon, says he is just a guest who came to see the village chief, and clearly looks at the girls who just came out of the bath. He says that Shin's sister and the other girl are beauties. The companions laugh, which infuriates Shin. We discover that the man is the son of the leader of the neighboring village. He reveals he was heading to the capital, but unfortunately, his wagon broke down. He demands to sleep at Ruri's house, suggesting that he might marry her in the future. Naturally, everyone refuses, and he mocks her, saying they are only angry because she never goes out with anyone. This sends Shin into a rage. He attempts to strike him, but Gon stops him and grabs him by the neck. At that moment, the village elder appears and orders him to let go. She states they will offer him a hut on the outskirts and that he is not permitted to leave it. On the way there, Gon sees Ryo and, thinking he looks effeminate, tries to kick him. However, Ryo is so resilient that the boy falls instead and decides to stop provoking him. After this argument, Shin asks the elder if his sister can stay with them for the night, as they live alone and she will feel better with Ruri. The grandmother accepts. At night, as the girls are going to sleep, Ryo appears and gives them a red stone, calling it an amulet. They are told to place it in a corner of the room. Meanwhile, we see Gon and his friends admitting they broke the wagon themselves, planning something with ill intentions for the following day. Early the next morning, the transport team appears, and we meet a boy mounted on a horse named Heya, who is responsible for product quality control. An entire day is spent verifying everything. Late that evening, we see Ryo training with his sword. He notices both his cousin and Seo watching him. They are surprised by his skill, and Ruri asks why he practices martial arts. Ryo recalls a promise made in his previous life to someone he swore to protect, though he says it is a bit embarrassing to tell. After tidying up, he tells them he liked a girl when he was small and wanted to be strong enough to protect her. He mentions he lost all contact with her, to which Ruri replies that if she is still alive, perhaps they will meet again someday. Afterward, Haidt finishes his bath and comments on how great it was. Ryo recommends the two girls bathe before it gets later and colder. At night, while everyone is sleeping, a silhouette enters the house, and inside the room, the amulet begins to glow. We realize it is Gon. He covers Ruri's mouth and tells her not to resist. This wakes Seo, and before she can scream, the man threatens to hurt her friend and begins to terrify everyone. At that instant, his two companions are struck by Ryo. Seeing Gon on top of his cousin triggers a flashback for Ryo of the moment his mother was killed. Gon tries to attack, but Ryo launches him away with a simple movement, completely destroying the wall. Seeing the man fallen on the ground, Ryo approaches and steps on his throat, making Gon beg for him to stop. Hearing his pleas, Ryo removes his foot but begins to punch his face without mercy, frightening the two girls who beg him to stop. This alerts the others, who arrive and try to restrain Ryo, who had already left the man in a very grave state. Afterward, the elder appears and is informed that Gon tried to attack Ruri and Seo. She takes the girls away while Haidt treats the man's wounds. He states that Gon and his men were responsible for the entire mess and requests that the kingdom apply a punishment to them. Ryo steps away, reflecting that this was the second time he wanted to kill someone. He realizes he is gradually approaching his former self and that, even unintentionally, he still thinks of avenging his mother. The next day, Ryo tells everyone he caused a lot of trouble the day before and cannot apologize enough. They thank him for saving them, and then everyone goes to have breakfast. On the day of the trip to the capital, the villagers begin gathering supplies while Gon and his friends are taken away locked in a cage. The elder talks to Hayate about the man's imprisonment, and he replies that he only did his duty. She then hands him a letter and asks him to deliver it to a man named Gouki, Hayate's father. He accepts but mentions they will need to stop at another village first. Afterward, the group departs with Ryo, Shin, and Seo, but they eventually separate from Hayate during the journey. After several days of travel, they finally reach the capital of Karasuki. Upon arriving in the city, Dora warns them to be very careful not to get lost, as it would be difficult to find each other in such a large city. The man says he is going out to handle some business, leaving the rest of the work to them. In the afternoon, we see Dora signing documents to keep Gon and his friends imprisoned, while Shin comments that he would have preferred to kill him. After that, the three of them go to a restaurant where they eat bowls of kamutang, and Ryo notices that it is very flavorful. After the meal, Shin thanks him for saving Seo and says he needs to ensure his sister tries the kamutang as well. The following day, Ryo goes out shopping with her and asks if she wants to taste the kamutang, as her brother would very much like her to try it. While walking down the street, an old woman interrupts them, asking Ryo if he would like to buy an amulet for his girlfriend. Seo becomes very nervous, correcting her by saying she is not his girlfriend. The woman apologizes and says they look very good together, offering them a souvenir of the capital. After a short conversation in which Seo initially refuses to accept, they finally manage to convince her, and she finds herself looking at a small pink flower brooch. The saleswoman tries to get her to try it on, saying it is a bit expensive but looks very beautiful on her, informing them it costs 2 silver coins. This seems very expensive to Seo, but Ryo is able to buy it. Afterward, they leave, and the vendor whispers to Seo that Ryo is a great catch and that she should not let him escape, as he surely must have many suitors. Next, we see 2 girls, one of them armed with a katana, facing 2 men who seem to want to kidnap the younger one. At that moment, Ryo appears, delivering a blow that knocks one man to the ground and rescues the girl. Afterward, the armed woman apologizes for being incompetent and feels sad for not being able to help the other girl, whose name is Komomo. Ryo calms her, saying she only lost consciousness and that everything is fine. At that moment, the guards begin to arrive, so Ryo takes Seo and leaves, stating he prefers to avoid trouble. Later, in a secluded place, we see Hayate talking to his father Gouki, telling him what just happened. After that, the young man hands him the letter the old woman had given him. The man reads it and is quite surprised, as it speaks about Ryo. The man then asks his son if he knows the name Ryo. In the afternoon, we see Dora, Shin, and the others brushing the horses, sweeping, and getting the wagon ready. When Ryo and Seo appear, she tells her brother that the kamutang was very good and asks if he could cook it again when they return to the village. However, a village girl notices the brooch she has in her hair. Ryo becomes embarrassed to answer and ends up leaving. Inside, Hayate and his father appear and start a conversation with him. They reveal that both Gouki and his wife were servants to his mother, Ayami, and say she belonged to the royal family of Karasuki, which leaves Ryo impressed to discover his mother was royalty. After that, they speak about their relationship with his father, whom they have known for more than 20 years. He says that at that time, the king was at war with Rokurin, the neighboring kingdom, and Zen volunteered as a soldier since he possessed a natural talent for spirit and martial arts. Consequently, the king did not delay in granting him the title of noble warrior. Gouki was put in charge of testing the man's skill, and after confirming Zen's incredible capacity, recommended him as a guardian of the royal family, protecting the princess, the mother of the prince, and the prince is Ryo. Some time later, the girl began to feel an attraction toward the warrior. Later, a truce was negotiated with the neighboring king. During the celebration ceremony, the prince who had gone as an ambassador ordered his assistant to kidnap the girl, but her father prevented the plan. Although he saved the girl, the prince was resentful for having lost an assistant. Thus, they ordered Zen's execution and arranged a marriage for the princess. This was the reason his parents fled the kingdom. The king prepared everything, and both left the country. Thus, when he receives the letter from the old woman speaking of his resemblance to his parents, and after seeing it for himself, it becomes clear that Ryo is Zen's son. He asks if Ryo would appear at the castle the next day to meet the current rulers, and Ryo accepts. In the morning, he appears before his grandparents, which makes them happy to finally meet their grandson. Afterward, they ask about his parents, and Ryo tells them they died. But the king would like to know how they lived and how they died. Ryo relates that his father died when he was young, and that he could not remember him. But that his mother, despite always smiling and never showing the pain of his father's death, lived a humble but happy life with him until she was murdered. Now we discover who the murderer of his mother truly was, a man named Lucius, who worked with his father as an adventurer, and was a friend of the family. And they tell us what happened on the day of Ayomi's death. In this memory, we can see that Ryo's mother had to go out to run some errands, while he was drawing on a blackboard. She tells him not to open the door for anyone. But some time later, Lucius called out, and Ryo, since he was a family friend, decided to open it. After that, the man struck the child and said that in this world, there were demons disguised as humans, and gave him a strange potion to drink. At that moment his mother returned and, seeing the situation, tried to fight the man. And that was how she was murdered, as he stabbed her with great force. After that, when Ryo woke up, he was in the slum district, the famous shanty town where he remained living as an orphan. And at age 7 was when his life changed. He tells us what happened at the beginning of the anime, when he saves the princess, and relates everything he experienced at the school, where there were many people who treated him rudely, but others who helped him all the time. So he felt very happy. He also says that he remained in this academy until he was 12 years old, and, after that, decided to travel to the land of his parents. Then the rulers ask if he holds a grudge against them. And he clearly says no, since they allowed his parents to live together, and it wouldn't make sense to hold resentment. But he will never forgive his mother's murderer. For this desire for revenge, though his mother would not have liked it, is what brought him there. The king tells him that if he follows the path of revenge, it will lead directly to hell. Ryo responds that he is willing to move forward and will accept taking that risk. After that, the king asks him to face Gensouki, since he has no rival of equal stature in any of the kingdoms, and he would like to test his abilities, because Lucius can be extremely skilled. Furthermore, considering the man's malice, one cannot rule out the possibility that he was also responsible for his father's death. Following this, Ryo accompanies the man to train, and when they arrive at his house, we discover that the girl they tried to kidnap was his daughter and Heiat's sister. Then, the bodyguard relates that it was the same boy who saved her, which surprises Gensouki and his wife. Shortly after, they begin training and enter combat. After an exchange of blows, everyone is impressed by Ryo's frightening potential, and then his rival concentrates energy in his sword and launches a powerful energy wave. But Ryo blocks using a water spell, ending the fight by stopping his attack just before hitting his opponent, thus securing victory. Afterward, the rulers say he possesses the necessary potential and will no longer need training. Before departing to return to Beltran, he asks a favor of the kings to be able to tell his cousin about his true lineage. Back at his parents' village, Ryo says goodbye to the graves and says that to continue living, it is necessary to face and accept his feelings of revenge. That night, they tell Rory that her cousin is the prince of the kingdom, and she believes they are playing a very mean prank. The old woman then explains how his parents met, making it clear that it was the truth. Very embarrassed, Rory begins to apologize for her lack of manners, as she is before someone from the royal family. He asks that she not treat him differently and continue acting in a normal way. After that, he says he is thinking of leaving the village the following year, as he intends to return to the land where he grew up and wants to visit a certain place on the way. His cousin asks if he will return to the village after that, and Ryo responds that he will return whenever they allow it. He also speaks about the place he wishes to visit and comments a bit about Latifa. The next day, Ryo greets all the people he hadn't seen yet since his return, and they are surprised to notice that he speaks differently with his cousin. He explains that when they lived together, she asked him to act naturally, which ends up sparking a bit of envy in the other girls. After that, we see Ryo helping the residents with village tasks such as hunting, fishing, gathering, and planting. Later, he talks to his cousin in the field while she was planting rice seedlings in the area he had indicated. At that moment, Dora appears, commenting that the girl is very hardworking and also a great suitor, something Ryo agrees with while she thinks they are just joking. Soon after, everyone begins to laugh together. All of this was being observed by Seirei from a distance, who had not progressed very well in her work. Ryo offers help and asks her to take over supervising the rest of the tasks with everything he taught her, especially when he is no longer present. Upon hearing this, the young woman becomes sad to discover that he intends to leave after the end of the autumn harvest, which makes her cry. When he notices, he asks what happened, and she invents the excuse that something got into her eye because of her dirty hands. Therefore, he helps her clean it. Ruri asks if she is alright and offers assistance. That afternoon, upon arriving home, Seo begins to cry. Her brother Shin appears and notices that she is very sad. Even though she tries to deny it, he discovers that the reason involves Ryo and decides to go demand an explanation. However, she explains that he did nothing wrong. She is simply sad because he is going to leave the village. This surprises Shin, who runs to Ryo's house to speak with him. The two arrive there and knock on his door, and upon seeing him, Shin kneels, begging him not to leave the village. At that moment, his sister, who followed him, apologizes for the trouble they might be causing, and after that, both apologize and depart. A short time later, Ruri enters the house after having taken a bath and sees that the atmosphere is a bit tense. After that, we continue to see the village with its tasks, and Seo practicing everything that Ryo taught her to improve. She works on her spirit arts, her physical condition, and even her swordsmanship. The following day arrives, on which there is a great festival where everyone eats a massive banquet and celebrates the harvest. Gouki challenges anyone who wants to face him in a fight, and the villagers push Dora to be his rival. Meanwhile, Ryo, along with the girls, dedicates himself to distributing and serving the food, which this time will be Kamutang, since he does not want to face anyone. Gouki ends up winning the sumo match. Seo asks Ryo if he has a moment so that the two of them can talk, and Ryo accepts, saying yes, so both of them withdraw. She, somewhat sadly, tells him that she is in love with him. This takes Ryo by surprise, and he apologizes since he cannot reciprocate what she feels. The girl asks if it is because he is going to leave the village, and he responds that it is not the primary reason, but it is a large part of it. Then she begs him to take her with him. Ryo responds that it is impossible, and she continues to insist, saying she will work very hard not to be a nuisance, since in recent months she has been exercising and improving her spirit arts. He tells her that this is not the problem, and that he truly cannot reciprocate her feelings. She insists that it is fine, and that, even if he does not look at her or feel anything for her, she begs him to at least do her the favor of letting her stay by his side. But with great sadness, he ends the conversation by refusing again and decides to leave the place, breaking the heart of the girl, who automatically begins to cry. Ryo apologizes to Shin, as he knows he is spying on him. That night, he gives thanks for everything they did for him, his grandmother, and his cousin. After saying goodbye, he leaves through the exit of the city, crossing paths with Seo again, who is waiting for him, and we see a small memory of the previous day when Ryo left. She was being consoled by her brother, but Gouki appeared and asked the girl if she was truly in love with Ryo to the point of wanting to leave her hometown for him, and she responded yes. Returning to the present, the girl says goodbye to him, saying she will work very hard and give her best. Ryo thanks her for coming to say goodbye to him, and finally, they part ways. Later, we see Ryo flying toward the world tree, and before him, he sees Orphea's familiar spirit flying toward him with its owner, Sarah, Alma, and Latifa on top. Upon landing, his little sister runs toward him, giving him a big hug and welcoming him back. At night, having dinner with the elders and the girls, he tells them everything he experienced in Yagumo and makes it clear that he will stay in the village for a few months. He also tells them that while traveling, he had the idea for a house that he could take in the space-time storage. The old woman Ursula comments that a design that does not need any type of foundation will be necessary, and she leaves the construction work to the dwarf Dominique after dinner. They return to the house where the rest of the girls are waiting for him. They say that, after several years since the last time they saw each other, they now act more shyly toward him, and he says that they have grown quite a bit and are now charming young ladies. The next day, Ryo wakes up, but he ends up getting startled and making a noise. This ends up alerting Sarah and the girls, who, upon entering his room, see that he is with a pink-haired girl, and she is completely naked. Ryo is embarrassed and says it is a misunderstanding. His friends ask who she is, and he says he knows nothing. So he asks the girl herself, who was still sleeping. When she wakes up, she says she is a spirit with whom Ryo made a pact. After talking with her for a while, Ryo reaches the conclusion that she is the spirit about which, in the previous time, Dryas spoke with him. Then he asks how they made the pact, but the girl replies that she has no idea. Ryo insists, asking her if it was she who taught him how to use spirit arts when he was little, as he remembers the fight he had with the princess's kidnapper, but the girl continues to answer that she does not know. After that, Ryo asks one last question, wanting to know why she suddenly appeared if she had been sleeping inside him until then, but the answer remains the same. He asks his friends if this is what happens the first time they summon their spirits, and they reply that since their spirits do not have a human form, they do not know for sure. After that, the boy asks for the spirit's name, but she does not remember. However, she tells him that she wants one since she is going to stay with him, but he asks why he is the one who has to give the name, and she replies that she exists precisely to serve him. Following this, Orphea asks why she has been calling him Haruto, and he says he will explain later. It is then that the spirit begins to speak to him through telepathy, so that the rest of the girls do not hear. She says she knows everything about the boy he was in his previous life, and says that no one will tell him. After being interrupted by Latifa, Ryo decides to give her a name, but needs some time to think about it. So Seirei recommends that he consult the village elders and also Dryas, since as a humanoid spirit, she can also help him. Afterward, Ryo tells her to accompany him, but first he will have to give her clothes. The girl stands up and makes a beautiful dress appear on her body. When he sees her, Ryo cannot help but remember his childhood friend. So after seeing her, he decides to name her Asia, which she liked very much. After that, the rest of the girls officially introduce themselves to her. Later, together with the elders, they talk about her spirit's memory loss, and then Dryas appears. The two are together and Dryas tells her that it is not a spirit she remembers, since it is normal for spirits to remember memories prior to their ascension. But she replies that the only thing she remembers is Haruto's spirit. Therefore, that name sounds strange to everyone in the room, and Ryo proceeds to explain his story. He says that the Strahl authorities are looking for him, and that Lyle is the one called Haruto. The elders, seeing that it is a situation a bit difficult to explain, prefer to change the subject. So Dryas begins to analyze Asia to try to identify what type of spirit she is. Then she asks her which element she controls best, and she responds, a fact that greatly surprises the elders. To test this, they ask Ryo to try to fight against her, thus testing her skills. So the fight begins as soon as the stone touches the ground. Both move so fast that it seems they are teleporting. Ryo notices that the spirit copied his techniques, and after an exchange of blows, he decides to leave close combat and tries to fight with his spiritual abilities. Then, after a great leap, he is blocked by the girl. He launches a powerful spell, making the spirit disappear, but she reappears behind him, returning the same attack. Ryo stops her with a fire spell, which is also blocked by the same version of the attack. The intensity of the abilities only increases until both Ryo and Asia summon a powerful tornado. Before launching them, they are stopped by Dryas, since if they had continued they could have put the village in danger. Thus they prove that the girl does not lie, but Dryas tells her that she still has flaws as a spirit. Then she tells Asia that she will teach her all kinds of things about spirits, and after that, they welcome her to the spirit people, which makes her very happy. Afterward, they prepare a great banquet while the two talk about her race and that they can acquire human forms since they are of the second highest category. We can see the girls, Ryo, and his spirit doing village tasks, such as harvesting the fields. In the afternoon, the dwarf Dominique shows the house he built, which even has a bathtub. Then Ryo says that tonight he will visit the elders. Since the house is already built, he will prepare for the journey since he will depart in 2 days. With the house already finished, the girls decide to cook something delicious for Ryo. They go to the kitchen, but Seirei asks why he decided to leave so suddenly. But Ryo replies that his idea was always to leave when the house was ready. She then asks him to spend more time with Latifa before leaving. And that night, while taking a bath, he thinks that he was very insensitive because he had hardly talked to his little sister since his spirit awakened. At that moment, Latifa appears at the door, asking if she could wash his back. Ryo, embarrassed, replies no because he is naked. But she says there is no problem because she is using a towel. He continues refusing because he does not like the idea. and she, a bit irritated, threatens to get into the bathtub. In the end, Ryo gives in and allows her to wash his back. After that, they begin to talk about their previous life. He makes her tell what she remembers, and she asks if Haruto was his name in the other world. He answers yes, and then she reveals that she was the girl who died beside him in the bus accident. After that, they talk about the sibling relationship they possess in this new life. Latifa makes Ryo promise that he will return to the village. The next day, Ursula hands him an object. It is a teleport crystal. This item takes the user to specific coordinates. In this case, it is the village, allowing him to return more easily. But Dominique makes it clear that it works only for going, not for returning to the place he was. She also gives him a pendant that allows him to change his hair color so that he can go unnoticed upon arriving in the kingdom where he is being sought. After that, he and his spirit bid farewell to the girls and the elders and depart by flying. Ryo then says via telepathy that they will visit Celia first, since he has been unable to communicate with her during all this time. Next, we see the teacher reading the letter that Ryo sent her. When Charles appears behind her, speaking as if they were already engaged, a knight soon appears looking for the nobleman and informs him that his presence is required. She tells him to go and not make the others wait, and the man withdraws. Now in the capital of Beltrum, we see Ryo and his spirit in the midst of a large crowd. To avoid being recognized, the boy presses his earring and changes his hair color. He enters a shop to buy bread, and talking to the saleswoman, he discovers why the city is so busy. It is because the following day a noble's wedding parade will take place, attracting many people from outside the capital. Ryo asks which house the groom is from, and she replies that he belongs to the house of Duke Arbor. That same night, Ryo and Aisha infiltrate the academy and manage to reach his teacher's laboratory. Ryo recalls his farewell with Celia and knocks on the door a few times, but unfortunately, he receives no answer. Upon opening the door, he notices that the place is completely empty. To discover where his teacher went, he asks the spirit to interrogate people using illusions. Thus, they trick a man who was organizing documents. The man reveals that she is at the royal palace, as her wedding ceremony will take place soon. Ryo asks whom she is going to marry, and the man replies that it will be with young Charles of the house of Duke Arbor. This leaves Ryo deeply surprised. The man explains that it is a political marriage because, after the conflict between the empires of Proxia and Beltrum, Beltrum was defeated in an overwhelming way thanks to the actions of the Arbor House. With this, the royal family lost power and had to leave the capital. Taking advantage of the situation, the Arbor House decided to join forces with the Clare House to regain influence, and for that reason, the marriage was arranged. After that, Ryo and the spirit depart, leaving the man completely asleep. Now on the roof of the academy, Ryo says he needs to speak with Celia personally, so he will have to go to the castle, since the location will be much more protected. The spirit suggests going first to analyze the terrain. Next, we see Celia and Charles dining together with her father, Count Clare. Both of them begin to talk about the wedding the next day, and the Count asks about security during the celebration. Charles responds that it will be impeccable and that he does not need to worry about it. He should worry more about himself, as strange rumors emerged some time ago saying that he and other nobles were in secret contact with the Duke and Huguenot, who had fled the kingdom. After talking a bit more about the wedding to avoid a bad image for the Count, he gives thanks for the intention. After that, they toast to the bride and to the good union. Later, we see Ryo observing the large number of guards present at the castle. Then, via telepathy, he speaks with the spirit, who tells him she has found Celia. She informs him that there is a large building near the entrance to the left. Then Ryo follows her there. Inside, we see the white-haired girl quite sad, thinking about the celebration the next day. After taking out the letter Ryo gave her and remembering it, she is about to burn it with the flame of a candle. But at that very moment, he appears, entering through the door. He speaks to her, but she does not believe it is him because his hair is different. Then he presses the pendant and returns to his original color, making the girl realize and embrace him tightly, very relieved that he is well. After talking about how much they have changed, she asks him to tell everything he experienced and offers him tea. Rio tells her he discovered she is getting married and asks if this is something she truly desires. She replies that it is for the sake of her family and apologizes, knowing that in the past, Charles and Rio had many problems. She claims that Charles is not a bad man toward women. Then, she asks if he came to marry her or take her somewhere else. This catches Rio by surprise, so she says she was joking, but insists that he should leave because they will soon come to get her. Although Rio tries to resist, she eventually forces him out of the room. She tells him she will give him 20 seconds to leave or she will scream for the guards. After a few seconds, the window opens, and she checks to see if Rio has actually left. Realizing he is gone, she thanks him from the heart for returning as promised, thinking that he made her very happy for a few seconds, but that she could not involve him in a problem like this. Afterward, we see Rio talking to Aisha, saying he couldn't understand his teacher's true feelings and has no idea what to do now, but he wishes to discover more about the reasons for the marriage. The two then begin to investigate. The next day, we see a meeting between Charles and Ries, who congratulates him on the wedding since it is the day of the ceremony. After some formalities, the ambassador senses the presence of a spirit, which disappears a few seconds later. Next, we see Celia putting on her wedding dress. When Charles calls her, she leaves the tent where she was preparing. He notices the girl is a bit nervous and introduces her to the rest of his wives. He leaves everything under the responsibility of a woman named Eleonora and quickly departs. In a moment alone, the first wife says that normally a count's daughter would be superior to them in social rank. However, once she marries Charles, being the seventh wife, her position among them will be the lowest, and she warns that she will not tolerate any impertinent behavior. After criticizing her, the woman is interrupted by a maid who informs them that Princess Christina has come to visit. She asks that the princess be allowed in. This irritates the first wife slightly since permission wasn't officially granted, but Celia asks if it would be appropriate to keep the princess waiting. The princess enters, and Eleonora invites her to sit. However, Christina says she hoped to speak privately with her former teacher. The other women apologize and withdraw. A bit later, after talking for a while, they end up discussing the state of the country and the royal family. Noting that all faith in the power of the crown has been lost, the princess apologizes because the consequences of this led to Celia being forced to marry. But Celia responds that it was a decision she made herself and asks why the princess is apologizing. Christina replies that she asks for forgiveness for stealing Celia's smile, which leaves her surprised, and promises she will do everything she can so her teacher can be happy again. Afterward, we see a conversation between Charles and Alfred, saying that Alfred will be the one to take command of the army since he is the strongest warrior in the kingdom. But Charles says that from now on, Alfred will be under his command, so he must not be deceived. Later, a carriage enters the city, and we see the villagers admiring the entrance of the two future newlyweds, accompanied by knights in a parade in their honor. Despite everyone being happy about the wedding, Celia is deeply sad. Charles tries to cheer her up, saying he can't wait to seal their marriage vows with a kiss. He makes a small gesture to one of the knights, who begins to praise him and his house, leading everyone to shout his name. At the end of the path, we can see the royal family and several important characters. Meanwhile, among the crowd is Rio, waiting for his master to pass. He thanks his spirit for her help, and upon seeing Celia, he is very surprised by how beautiful she looks. At that moment, Aisha begins to speak via telepathy with the girl, identifying herself as Rio's spirit. When Celia turns her head and sees her student, she begins to cry out of shame, as he was the only person she didn't want to see her like this. Charles becomes worried seeing her cry and asks what is wrong. To avoid suspicion, the girl says she doesn't know that she just felt many emotions suddenly leading him to believe she was crying for happiness. She tries to communicate with Aisha again, but there is no response, and when she tries to look for Rio again, he has disappeared. Thus, she thinks it was all an illusion. Arriving at the area where the royal family, the guard, and the nobles were waiting, Charles extends his hand to her. Right at the moment she is about to hold his hand, a scream from several soldiers is heard due to a threat. The moment Celia looks toward the place where the screams came from, she can see Rio running in her direction. With a kick, he sends one of the guards flying, and one by one they are pushed out of his way. The soldiers move into formation to try to stop him, but with an air spell, he makes them all fly, and then the mage squad tries to stop him. But no magical projectile reaches him, as Ryo is too fast, and with a great leap, he passes over all the troops. In this way, as a last resort, the knights try to defend the couple with their own bodies. Meanwhile, Charles tells Celia not to worry, saying that everything will be fine, since the remaining ones are the most skilled soldiers in the entire kingdom. But this seems not to matter to Ryo, as he defeats them all easily. After that, he delivers a powerful punch to the groom's stomach, who falls dominated by pain. At that moment, Ryo pulls out a knife pretending that Celia is in danger, and the count, her father, reacts indignantly at the lamentable behavior of the guards. Duke Arbor also reacts with anger, realizing that his house's name could be stained by that act, but the guards behind the two of them stop him to avoid further trouble. Meanwhile, through telepathy, Ryo explains to Celia that she must act as a hostage. At that moment, Charles tries to get up, but Ryo steps on him with more force and threatens to break his spine. Next, he calms Celia, saying that it is not true that everything is part of a distraction. Then he asks her again the same thing from the night before, if she really wanted that marriage from the bottom of her heart, and asks if the Duke's house threatened them. When she realizes that he knew about this, she is very surprised. Ryo says that if she wants, he can put an end to the marriage, because he loves her very much and does not want her to be unhappy, nor to regret for the rest of her life for having made the wrong decision. After saying this, he remembers the loss of his murdered mother, and asks once more if that marriage is something she really wants, but she says that prioritizing her own feelings would be causing problems for everyone else. Ryo, seeing that the girl has no idea how to respond, tells her that if it were truly something correct or that she wanted, she would not have that expression, so he is going to help her. She asks what he would do if she said she does not want to get married. He then responds that he would take her very far from there so that no one could blame Count Claire. After some hesitation, Celia asks for him to take her away from there. Then Ryo acts like a villain, saying he is going to humiliate Charles by kidnapping his bride precisely on the wedding day, and with a great leap begins his escape. Everyone becomes worried, while the groom orders the guards to capture Ryo, but the leader of the knights asks them not to break the formation. Even so, they do not listen to him and end up allowing it, creating an opening through which Ryo manages to escape. After casting some magic spells, an ambassador from the Proxia Empire wonders if the boy is truly the same one who caught his attention last time, since he uses very similar abilities, and thinks that he has become much stronger. To verify his evolution, he launches a powerful magic attack that Ryo has difficulty repelling, but even so, he manages to stop it. And after the great explosion, he takes Celia in his arms and flees. Charles is indignant and says not to shoot, since they could hit the girl, and asks them to pursue him. But the leader of the knights tells him to stop, since the aerial units mounted on wyverns will pursue him from now on. He gives orders for all troops to surround the capital and asks Vanessa to remain protecting that area. At that moment, Charles becomes irritated with Alfred, asking who gave him permission to take command, but he responds that he does not care. The important thing now is to discover the identity of the kidnapper, and after that, he runs after Ryo. Meanwhile, among the nobles, Rias begins to think they are interested in both the boy and the spirit that never appeared. Later we see Ryo escaping with the aerial troops behind him, and after some praise from Celia about how strong and fast he had become, he decides to head down into the alleys instead of continuing over the rooftops. In this way, it will be easier to lose the Wyvern Knights. After that, he asks Asia to follow the plan, as he will be in charge of serving as a decoy. While the two girls leave the city, one of the knights sees Ryo exit the alley, but this time without the girl, so he calls for reinforcements with a flare. As soon as this happens, they begin to shoot at him with magical tanks, and we see that he is also followed by soldiers mounted on horseback on the ground. Ryo then decides to descend from the rooftops, taking out all the nearby guards with a few strikes, but many more remain close to him. They follow a strategy of not letting him rest until they wear him down. Ryo thinks that things are much more difficult because he cannot kill anyone, Until finally, Alfred appears and asks the other soldiers to step aside as they could be seriously injured. A trade of blows begins between the knight's sword and Ryo's knives. Both recognize each other's strength, and a very fair and balanced fight ensues in which both show off their great skills, surprising the rest of the soldiers. Alfred asks why Ryo is not trying to attack him with the knives and thinks he is being underestimated. He then raises his sword and launches a powerful energy attack through it that destroys the entire street without leaving a trace of Ryo. One of the soldiers asks where he is, and Alfred responds that if the attack had actually hit him, nothing would be left of him. However, he felt no impact, and there are no signs that he was hit, so he likely managed to escape. After that, he orders them to search the entire area as a precaution and also to look for Celia. Later, we return to the nobles, where we see Rias observing a storm that is about to arrive. On the other hand, Celia is beside Asia, waiting for Ryo at the top of a small mountain. Shortly after, he arrives, and the girl gets excited and runs toward him, but ends up tripping and falling against his chest. He catches her before she gets hurt. After thanking Asia for her help, they propose starting a journey far away from there. In a brief moment, Celia wonders if her father will be okay, but she is happy that Ryo saved her. At that instant, Asia senses a powerful mana approaching, and from afar they see pillars of colored light rising to the sky. Asia is in disbelief and asks Ryo for help to save them. That is where the anime ends, but we still have a post-credit scene. In it, we see two girls and a boy who seem to be lost, as they have no idea where they are or how they got there. After the black-haired girl looks at her cell phone and notices there is no signal, a huge and muscular man appears. Shortly after, we see this man and others putting the young people inside a carriage as if they were slaves, and Ryo is among them. All of this is very strange because the young people speak Japanese, while the people of the magic world speak another language. Ryo then tells the driver that one of the guards was carrying an object while showing the girl's cell phone. When he hears the language of the kidnapped young people, he realizes it is Japanese, and as soon as they recognize his language, the men begin to attack. But Ryo finishes them off without any mercy, even killing and severing the limbs of several of them. After rescuing the young people, they realize the boy also speaks Japanese, and they say one person is still missing. When they go to the last girl, Ryo breaks the lock using his spirit arts, and upon seeing her, he remembers the promise he made in his past life. Then the girl introduces herself as Miharu Aes, his childhood friend. And that is how the anime ends. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. A hug.